Okay, peeps, welcome back. So today we're going to be talking about big dip buying opportunities on the grayscale trusts. With that being said, let's get it. Okay, so before I go into the grayscale trust with y'all, we got to talk about a few things. So first thing is, I'd like to give a shout out to Estes 1957 for the super thanks, $99.99. Thank you for that. Thank you for supporting this channel, and thank you to everybody else also for supporting this channel. It means a lot. So let's go ahead and get into Bitcoin first, and I'm going to explain why we need to talk about Bitcoin in this video. So basically, like I told you guys before, we were looking at a potential pullback in time before the elections, which should theoretically be when Bitcoin rips. However, it does look like we're going to get both a pullback in time and also potentially a pullback as well. So you guys are probably wondering what I mean by this. So we talk about structure levels. Basically, if Bitcoin gets a candle close below this red candle right here at 58,250, it's likely going to come down and hit this trend line. So that would be 57,300. It could possibly even have some kind of flash crash wick all the way down to 52,000. So there is a possibility for lower prices going on here. Now, if we take a look at the weekly, so last week we saw this hammer candle and thought it was pretty bullish. However, the fact that it was lower than this candle was a little concerning. And as you guys can see, we are still selling off even further yet. So if this weekly candle gets a close below, I would say roughly about 61,500, which is current structure, that would be concerning. It would have to then get below this, the bottom of this flag, and also this first macro trend line. If it does all of those things, then likely Bitcoin's going to probably bottom out somewhere between 48 to 52,000, which is not great. Okay, it's not great, but in my opinion, even that still would not be the end of the bull market. So if I go out to the 2-week time frame, the initial sell-off was apparent even before it started showing its face on the weekly, because again, we have an imminent death cross on the 2-week time frame, and this candle right here was already starting to get below these candle bodies over here and even below this one right here. And usually when you get a lower candle close below the previous candle, that's a very bearish sign. Okay. The important thing to note is that we're still above this trend line here, even on the 2-week time frame. As you guys can see, if it gets below that, likely, like I said, in terms of structure, probably 48 to 52,000, and then below that, maybe 40 to 44,000. In terms of the overall picture for Bitcoin, so if it breaks this first trend line, then likely on the monthly it could go all the way down to 39,000. But as long as it holds this trend line down here, in my opinion, we are still in a bull market. So long as there is not a candle close below this level here, this line that you guys see, or below the EMAs on the monthly time frame, in my opinion, we are still in a bull market. Doesn't mean that there can't be a 30-40% correction before the next move up. Like I said, in 2021, we saw a 50% drop roughly about this time of the year in 2021. I can go back and you guys can see this for yourself right here. From this point all the way down during summertime, as you guys can tell. And then Bitcoin ultimately ended up going to new highs anyways. I suspect it might possibly do something similar between now and December of this year before we see Bitcoin's true all-time high. So what is the reason for this? It's pretty simple. Mt. Gox, okay? It was a crypto exchange that apparently got hacked and went out of business or something along those lines. And a lot of people lost a lot of money on the exchange. So you guys can read this in your own time, but essentially what it's saying is around the time that it went out of business here in 2014, one Bitcoin itself was worth about $600. So if, let's just say, for example, it was at $100 back then, somebody bought a Bitcoin at $100, and let's say they bought 100 of them. If Bitcoin's now worth $70,000, that's a pure profit of $69,900. Even if they sold just half of those Bitcoin that they have, they'd walk away with $3.5 million. And if Bitcoin is potentially about to dump, do you think some of these people are really not going to take profit? They're literally sitting on like a God knows how many X's. I mean, let's just take a look at the numbers here. Let's say by the time they do get their Bitcoin is at 50,000. Okay. Divide that by 100. I mean, these people are literally sitting on a 500x on Bitcoin that they haven't had access to in a decade. Most likely, they're probably going to sell. And we're in a Fed tightening cycle right now, which means, in my opinion, it's even more likely that they're going to sell and they're going to take profit. And it will be at long-term capital gains rates, which at the maximum rate is only 20%. So I think a lot of these people likely will at least take some profit on some of the Bitcoin that they have, which could lead to further selling pressure in Bitcoin, which means altcoins and the grayscale trusts could drop. Okay. So in terms of the positions are still the same. So nothing's really changed here. I don't know why this thing needs to reload. That's kind of annoying that it does that. But anyways, yeah, so things are still the same here. As you guys can see, we haven't bought, haven't sold anything. As a matter of fact, we have, yeah, sorry about that. So
welcome back, Grace.
I didn't mean to put Ethan on the spot here. I was actually watching one of his videos before this got started. So anyways, we've stopped buying altcoins entirely and also stopped buying the grayscale trusts because we kind of suspected maybe there might be a pullback, but wasn't really sure. So we kind of just been keeping the eye on Bitcoin. Dollar cost averaging a little bit less than we normally would into altcoins because, again, if the Bitcoin price drops 20%, altcoins are probably going to drop 30-40%. We would rather buy at those lows. Now, in terms of the Robinhood portfolio, we actually got rid of Mara today. So I don't know if you guys can see it, but Mara is not in here. We're actually considering getting rid of Riot on Friday morning as well, so long as it's in profit. Probably going to keep CLSK because it's so deep in the red at this point. Maybe just write some further outdated options on that. But the reality is if Bitcoin does drop to 40 or 50K, even the miners are probably going to get hit pretty hard. And we would rather buy at those lower prices than at more expensive prices like they are right now. So that covers Bitcoin. So let's talk about the dip buying opportunities you could potentially be seeing on some of these grayscale trusts. So I would reiterate once again, likely 1750 is going to be the 1750 somewhere in there is going to be your first potential area of buying here. Below that, you'd be looking at roughly about 13 to 15 bucks. Let's just say it does dip all the way down below this trend line and kind of bounces off of 13 to 15. That could happen. Even just to get a move back up to this resistance here at 27. Again, this is between about 24 to 27. That's a 97% move. The last time we were in LTCN, actually, if I'm not mistaken, was around $13. So 290% move to the swing high. And of course, as you guys know, LTCN's all-time high is $510. BCHG, likely, I mean, if Bitcoin does have a big drop, it's likely at the very least, going to come back down to the support. So 680 to 760. And let's just say you get a move to the top of resistance where that last major red candle was. That's a 194% move there. And all the way back up to the wick high, 241, 242% move. HZEN, we're still within this wedge, but if we do get a big drop on Bitcoin, likely this thing is going to tank. So I would say probably the bottom of the wedge would be the first target, 325 or so. Then below that, this major significant, in my opinion, it probably will be a significant level of support between 250 to 290. Reason being is because we just rocketed straight through it. Well, pretty much on the dump and on the rip, as you guys can see here. So at some point, this thing has got to retest, right? So somewhere between 250 to 290 could potentially be a dip buying opportunity. So let's just say it does go back down to support here and you're looking to swing it up to the high. You would then be looking at nearly a 295% gain, $10.50 HZEN. ETCG, I would say $11 would probably be ideal at this point, but if it does get below that, then some potential areas we could be looking at. I would say probably somewhere around the $9 range. Again, you kind of have a lot of wicks here, as you guys can see, both on the resistance level and also one here on support. So about 9 to 950 could potentially be a significant level for a potential bounce on ETCG. Obviously, the major macro support here is $3 to $5. That's the bear market lows. I don't know that it necessarily goes that low, but we'll just measure it from around, let's say around $9 or so, all the way to the previous swing high, roughly about 115% move. Again, that is at 1930 per share. ETH. So I do suspect that if Bitcoin is going to drop, Ethereum and ETH are going to drop. So 25 to 28, 29, I would say would be the first immediate buy zone. Maybe below that, even probably taking a look at 23 is maybe like a wick down dip buying opportunity before it gets sucked back up by the buyers, back above support. So let's just assume you get it somewhere at the bottom of the range and you ride it to the cup and handle target, which is this white line right here. It'd be an 84% move. That's a $46.50 ETH, which again is sitting right around this previous peak in the last bull cycle. Phil G, this thing is really doing a whole lot of nothing. I suspect if Bitcoin is going to keep dropping, Phil G is probably going to have an epic drop next week. Filecoin is already going down. And Filecoin is one that we hold a lot of. If it's going to keep going down, we probably will buy more. But like I said, we want to wait to see Bitcoin base out first. So you can see it's already down quite a bit, 8%. So I'm still looking at this support down here, in my opinion, roughly about 37 to 40. That's the bearish case scenario. Bullish case scenario is that we get up here to this inverse head and shoulders pattern target, which is all the way up here at 300. Previous swing high is at 400. So just riding it from support to the all-time highs at a minimum, 850%. If I were to try to be as precise as possible about this, you'd be looking at more of over 1,000%. So pretty huge move there. GBAT, this thing, it went up massively and then it went down massively. So I don't know what to tell you all about that. It does happen. Fake outs happen all the time in trading. You can see it happened up here too. This thing went up massively, tried to test resistance, got shot back down. So we see kind of this tweezer top here, just like this one. I would still say likely the support is going to probably hold. So roughly about $7.90 to $10. If it gets below that, obviously we'd be looking at this support down here. So I don't know that it goes that low, but again, it kind of depends on what Bitcoin and the altcoin market does. So below that would be roughly about 440 to 5.25, I would say. So let's say you pick it up at $8, for the highest reward to risk in this case, and you ride it to the top, 300% move. However, if you manage to really get lucky and get it down here and then ride it all the way to the top, it would still be a massive gain. So 584%. Just to give you guys an idea of how massive 584% is, let me actually show you something. So this is what differentiates crypto from stocks, okay? So if I go back 2 years on NVIDIA, let's say 2 years for NVIDIA, okay? So we're going to go back to, and I know this is not really relevant to the crypto market, but I just want to show you this. So even after a 2-year period, from July 2022, roughly about almost to the end of the bear market, all the way to the top, this thing still only did 681%. And you're talking even more than that in just potentially a matter of months before the end of the year on some of these crypto grayscale trusts. So do keep that in mind. That's one of the reasons we look at crypto, because the moves are just massive compared to stocks and they take much less time. So potential inverse head and shoulders here on GLIV. Targets all the way up here, just past all-time highs at 83, and then the all-time highs at 80. If Bitcoin and altcoins keep going down, I suspect likely this thing bottoms out somewhere between $11.50 to $15. It's kind of a wide spread there, but is what it is. So from the bottom of support to the swing high is a 582% move. If I were to go from the bottom of support, let's say all the way to that inverse head and shoulders pattern target, 655%, you can see that move from this support all the way to this target up here is almost equal, or if not greater than NVIDIA's move over the course of 2 years, but it would only take, well, let's see how long this move took right here. So this move back here basically started January of 2024 and ended in March of 2024, NVIDIA is considered to be the greatest stock in the current day. Tons of people buying it. It took 2 years to do 600%, whereas this thing only took like, what is this, like 2 months? That's it. So G-Link, again, I would still say support is going to be somewhere down here around $65. So 65 to 85 just as a general range. The target is all the way up here at the highs, 220. That's not the ultimate target, just so y'all know. That's the first target, okay? So that's 225%. If I were just to give you guys another target, let's say that the bottom of the move was from the swing high to the swing low was at the bottom of support there. The next swing high could be all the way up at $317 at the 1.618. So GSOL, this thing does look quite bullish, bouncing off the support. But again, because Bitcoin and the other altcoins are dumping, I would not touch this thing with a 10-foot pole. Again, the risk here is massive. If Bitcoin drops to 50 or 40K, this thing could just dump off a cliff. It's possible. Okay, like I told y'all, when Bitcoin bleeds, altcoins bleed harder. So you're looking at a potentially 60% drop here. I would still argue 164 to 200, 165 to 200, somewhere there is going to be a solid bounce point. 580, 585 is going to be the first target here. So that would be about a 240% move. GXLM, still looking at this line as support. So roughly about $25 or so. A lot of price action got traded through there. So the swing high would be the first target here, which is $70. Keep in mind, guys, when we get to these first targets, we'll then give you guys an update on following potential targets. We're not just going to stop at, oh, well, it hit the target, so we're done. No, we're not going to do that. We're going to go over higher targets once we get to that point. So 173% move there for the top being at $70. Mana, it is sitting at a support level right now, which is great, and it does seem to be holding. However, if this thing does drop below, which is possible, it could happen, okay? I don't want you guys to think that that's not possible. Likely it comes down and retests this $10, $11 level. Support currently is $17.60 to $20. And I'm not saying it can't bounce off this support. It can always bounce, okay? It can always go higher, but it can always go lower too. You got to understand this is crypto, and crypto is crazy sometimes. It really is. So from the bottom of the support to the swing high up here, 287% move. If it gets down to about $11, you would then be looking at a much larger move, roughly about 510%. Zcash, this one is actually shockingly holding up pretty well, even though Zcash itself is, well, it's already down a lot. So that's probably why it shows it's only down 3%, because it has been down for quite some time, in my opinion. I think Zcash itself is oversold. So likely, I would say worst case scenario in the immediate short term, maybe we come back down to about 315, 3.25, somewhere in there, and maybe you look at a bounce, kind of how you saw this wick here. If we get that move, and let's say we ride it all the way up to the swing high up here, which again is at 10.25, you'd be looking at roughly about 224% move. So, kind of what we're looking at for the end of the year is it's possible the Bitcoin could sell off to somewhere between 40 to 50K and still be in a bull market, which it would then rebound from towards the end of the year. Okay, it's possible. And I want people to understand that when the Fed cuts rates and the yield curve inverts, we have to watch that closely to see how the markets react. Okay, if we start seeing aggressive and almost panic-like selling, that's in my opinion, a clear early warning sign that markets could potentially capitulate massively. I will say that because we had two bear markets in 2020 and 2022, I think that the market's already priced a lot of these events in, including the Fed rate cuts. So worst case scenario, in my opinion, probably we get something like, sorry, give me a sec, guys. I don't know why this thing's not cooperating. So probably worst case scenario, instead of getting a bear market when the Fed cuts rates, maybe we get something like this, like a 10 to 20% pullback like we saw last year. I would say that that's possible. Okay, I don't think we're going to get some 40, 50% drop when the Fed cuts rates and the yield curve inverts, but do understand that there is a risk that there could at least be a 10 to 20% correction. Tom Lee's estimates for the end of the year are 5,800 for the S&P 500. You can see S&P is at all-time highs. It's almost 5,600. My estimate is that I think the S&P is probably going to be at 6,000 by the end of the year. And Tom Lee's been notorious for being right. Okay, so if he is right, that means that likely if there is a correction of any kind, it's not going to be that substantial. Which means that likely the Fed cutting rates is not going to kill the crypto bull run. Likely the crypto bull run will probably come off even more powerful than Bitcoin going to 75,000 closer towards the end of the year. And that's when we see the massive alt season once Bitcoin tops out at, 150, 200K, something like that. So anyways, it's the dip buying opportunities on Grayscale. Hope y'all enjoyed this content. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see y'all later. Peace.